What's up, you guys? It's Nathan. We're back from the YouTube video, and today I want to talk about the all-wheel drive system in my EG hatch and the personal experiences I've gone through. Now, I'm not saying this is a definite guide or anything. This is just my own experience. We're gonna get right into it. We're gonna start from the front and all the way to the back. So to start things off, I have a B-series all-wheel drive transmission that came from a first gen CRV. I took out the gear set and put a GSR gear set 1 through 4, retaining the 5th gear from the stock CRV. You have to use the Speed Factory front-wheel drive to all-wheel drive kit, and they laid out a pretty good instruction guide on how to do it. So I think if you guys know how transmissions work, you should be able to do it on your own. If not, I strongly advise going to a professional. So you use a CRV starter. You have to extend the starter wire, but that's pretty simple. It's super important that once you get under here that you use the CRV all-wheel drive half shaft, not the front wheel drive. They are a little shorter, and that shortness can shear the inside of the diff, and then you have to take the transmission out. It's a big pain in the butt. So make sure you get an all-wheel drive half shaft, mid shaft, whatever you want to call it. Secondly, I haven't experienced a single disc clutch in an all-wheel drive, but almost the entire internet will warn you to use a twin disc. So that is what I did. I picked up an XD twin disc clutch, and from what I've experienced, it's pretty nice. I'll know more in a couple hundred miles. So for mounts, you can retain a front wheel drive, driver post mount, but then you have to get a special transmission mount and a special T-bracket. It's hard to see back there, but it is there. I got them from Hassport. They have a fairly competitive prices, but I know other companies such as Hub City Performance and S1 Built are also making their own mounts. So definitely some more research out there. I went with Hassport because they were local to me at the time and I got a good price on them. So with that being said, last thing about the CRV transmission is that I have a one from a 1999 to an 01, which means it has a PEP 2 transfer case. This transfer case is the stronger OEM version of the two. And if you ever want to go billet transfer case, you actually do need a PEP 2 casing and transfer case, because that is just what they make the billet casing around. So make sure you can, or at least try to pick one of those up in particular. So I'm gonna crawl under the car and explain as we go. So here's that transmission. Like I said, I was able to use a front wheel drive slave, not a big deal. And you can retain a front wheel drive axle for the driver's side, but the passenger side axle, which is right here, you actually can use a K-Series RSX base model driver's side. This driver's side will fit in the passenger side, no problem. It was actually very easy to swap in. So that was really cool. So we'll move to the drive shaft. Now, as you can see, there's the drive shaft, and I have this big aluminum piece right here. That's an adapter, which adapts the CRV transfer case to the Freelander drive shaft. So they make different versions of this, or you can upgrade to 310 joints, but I opted to just go with an adapter. I got them from a guy named Adam Kari, I don't know how to pronounce his last name. Really cool guy, good price. I think I paid like $300 for the front and the back. So yeah, so now we have the Freelander drive shaft, which goes, from the front to the viscous coupler, which is also Freelander. And then I had to get the back one shortened to fit the chassis. Make sure you only shorten the back shaft. It's very important you shorten the back shaft. I'm not 100% sure why, but that's what the entire internet told me when I was getting my shaft shortened. I think it's important that you have this drive shaft loop right here. Some people will disagree, but safety first. I don't want to get hurt. I just have this viscous coupler bolted in right to the frame. I got a bolt on the other side or nut on the other side holding it in. Very straightforward. I didn't rebuild the viscous. It takes some patience because you have to send it out to a place in England. I didn't feel like doing that. And then the only local place that would shorten my drive shaft is AA Drivelines in Minneapolis. So they're not even that local to me, but they did a very good job. That's everything under the car that I can think of right now that is all-wheel drive related. If I think of something more, I will add it. One thing I should mention with the shifter, I should say, is that I had to drill a hole down here. It's pretty hard to see, but you have to drill a hole through your firewall right next to your heater core lines, and then you can feed them out and back over onto where they're supposed to shift. The transmission, the shift selector. So that was kind of a pain. It hurt to cut up my car like that, but it is what it is to go all-wheel drive. So I took apart my center console and the thing that hides this ugly piece. This is a OEM shifting box from the CR-V that I mentioned earlier, the first gen. And I just drilled it into my car so it'd stay nice and stable, and then I ran the cables back through under the dash and out the firewall like I mentioned earlier. It was not that challenging to do. Little time consuming if you're doing it alone, just to get the bolts underneath and get them all tight. But if you do it right, you can actually hide this whole piece under your cover pretty well. It wasn't that bad. One thing I should note with the twin disc, and this isn't just all-wheel drive related, this is all twin discs, is that you should have a pedal stop. I don't know if you guys can see it, but the clutch has a bolt that's kind of welded onto it that stops it. That way you don't overextend your clutch. If you overextend your clutch, it can either wear out your thrust washers, which is not good for your engine, or it can simply break the fins on your pressure plate. So it's very important to get that clutch stop in there. I had my buddy help me weld it. Shout out to him. You know who you are. And that's pretty much it for the interior, all I had to do. Cables, as you can see, they're hooked up. The e-brake works like it should. The cables are from a 94 to 01 Integra, along with the rear calipers that are underneath this tire. I'm going to take this tire rail off real quick, and then I will show you some more. As you guys can see, I have now taken the tire off. It's right here. And I'm going to show you this. So these are stock Integra rear brakes and e-brake cable. I painted them black just because it looks good. And now these are Hub City rear trailing arms. I got them from Hub City. They are the OEM style ones. They are probably the top 3 all-wheel drive manufacturers out there for Hondas. I would say it's Hub City, S1 built, and Power Factory tuning. Now, some people like each one a little bit more than the other. I went with Hub City because they were what's out when I first bought them. I like the OEM style look. It just keeps it that factory look. Now you're gonna need aftermarket camber arms and toe arms, which I will show you underneath later. But this just shows you that, the Hub City LCAs and the diff mount relocate where your coilover sits. That way you do not have to do any sort of coilover modification. And you can see the clearance between the axle and the coilover is plenty, so you do not have to worry about it hitting. Now the axles used for an EG hatch with the Hub City rear diff mount are 2 long passenger side rear axles from that first gen CR-V. I'm not sure if that is the same with EK hatches or other diff mounts. I'm just speaking from what I know. So if you have a Hub City diff mount, then you need 2 long passenger rear axles from a first gen CR-V. Now here's that diff mount like I previously mentioned. I went with Hub City because look at this thing. This thing is beautiful. Billet aluminum with the billet LCAs. I mean, it just looks great on the road. It shines when you clean it up. It's so nice. This other side is the exact same as the other side, so I'm not going to take it apart and show you, but 2 long rear axles. Now we're gonna get to the fuel and then the rear diff and anything else I can mention. So here we are back underneath the car. This is that fuel tank that I previously took out in my other video. This is the other one that I didn't. This one's made by FCS Race. It holds 5.8 gallons. You can choose it to have a fuel level sender so your fuel gauge works. I think it is overall a better tank than this one, but I bought this one before this one was released because all-wheel drive is still so new. So yeah, I had to deal with what I got. As you can see, there's that little piece that I drilled in on my last video. So I haven't got it tested yet because my tow arms aren't here. But here is that CRV rear diff. It is pinned and welded. I'm not going to show you it because I'd have to take it all apart. I don't really want to do that. But I promise you it is pinned and welded. Otherwise, it is an open diff sent to those rear axles from the passenger long ones. So that's cool. I have a adapter plate on this guy right here, as you can see, like I mentioned up front, and I have them connected through one line. I'm not sure if this is going to work yet. I'm still, playing around with the whole setup. It's very new to me, so we're still working through some issues. But I have a fuel pump and an inline fuel filter. Maybe I said them backwards, I'm not sure. But it's got all the gas I'm going to need. It has a 6 feed AN feed and an 8 AN return that I can upgrade at a later date. But for now, we're going to leave it like that. And then here's these tow arms are missing right here because I'm not sure if this is a common thing with EG hatches in the Hub City RTAs, but my aftermarket LCAs were too long, even at their shortest setting. Which this means I had to cut them short and then, put them back in. And while I was cutting one short, it stripped out the threads. I did a bad job. I had to buy new ones, and they are going to be here on Friday. It happens. It's only, a temporary setback. It is what it is. And on these fuel tanks, I do have it located where the factory, where you put the gas in, is still connected to this tank, which then will flow into this tank, which is the whole reason we put that vent in, to have, the fuel go in and fuel go out. And then we have this diff mount up here, kind of hard to tell, but it's this bar right here, and it gets welded to the frame here. And on the opposite side, that's your secondary diff mount, which bolts into the diff, as you can see right here. Just need to weld it in and then paint it, that way it doesn't rust. Not a big deal if you know how to weld. If not, I strongly advise you get your welding buddy over and do it for you. That way it's structurally sound. Now when you do get this diff mount installed, or not the diff mount, but the diff itself installed, you do have to cut part of your subframe. It's going to be very hard to see on camera, but right here you can see there's a whole chunk missing where my hand is. Sorry for the bad placement. I don't have a lift, but you cut probably 2 inches to 3 inches into your subframe. That way the diff clears. Not a big deal. It's a little scary cutting into a car, but sacrifices you make to get powered all 4 wheels. As I said earlier with the fuel system, I have that 6 AN being fed into the rail with AM rail, AM fuel pressure regulator, and then that -8 return right here goes back down there. I have them kept underneath the body of the car, steel braided, that way if any rocks or debris hit them, they don't break right away, because that would be really bad. Man, that's about it for the all-wheel drive. Like I said, you don't have to use a GSR gear set or the Speed Factory front-wheel drive to all-wheel drive kit. You can use the CRV gears. The benefit of going GSR 1 through 4 is the gearing ratio, which this means is the CRV ratio has a really short first to second. So it's pretty hard to launch these things and then shift fast if you use the CRV gears. Now, if you ever driven a GSR transmission, you know that the gears are more favorable to turbo applications. They have longer gears and they tend to be a little stronger, not a lot. Some will argue that they're not, but they do hold, up to that 600 in front wheel drive. Now, the one thing that B-series is known to break is the transfer case housing that I showed you earlier. It's way down there. Hard to see it, I know. But past 500 horsepower mark, they kind of explode or blow up, break, whatever you want to call it, which is why people go with the billet version. But the billet version, the casing alone is $1,000, and then you spend another $1,000 on internals. The bill adds up pretty fast. I think I'm gonna go K-series before we get to that point, so I'm just gonna jump over it. Now the K-series, I don't know a ton about the K-series, but I do know that you do not want to buy the Hasport T-bracket. They are known to crack blocks, break your block. So you want to get the Hub City T-bracket, that way it doesn't crack block. Maybe by the time you get to K-all-wheel drive, Hasport will update that bracket and it won't crack blocks anymore. But right now, on March 22nd, you should probably just buy the Hub City one. That way you don't, you're not gonna break a block. Otherwise, once I go K-series, pretty much the drive shaft back can remain. All I have to change up is the adapter from the T-case to the drive shaft, which I don't think is going to be a very big deal. So once I K-swap it, I won't even be all-drive swapping it. It'll pretty much just be a K-swap with an all-drive transmission. Now the all-drive transmission for the K-series comes from the 2nd gen CR-V or the Honda Element. Now the Honda CR-V transmission is better only because the speed sensor takes a lot less work to get it to work with, this car in particular. You don't have to do a lot of wiring or figuring out on the computer to get it to be, accurate, which for me is a huge bonus because I'm not a huge fan of wiring. So when I am going to go K-series, I make sure to get a CR-V transmission. I don't have one yet because they are around $1,000 to buy. And I want to get this thing running and driving and ripping on the streets first. There are some bits and pieces that I'm sure I missed. If you guys want me to talk about anything else or can think of anything else for all-wheel drive, please let me know or leave in the comments. I'll address it in another video or just address it in the comments. One thing I forgot to mention when it comes to these transmission mount in particular is that what I found is when you mount it all the way up, that the case of the transmission down there will actually hit the frame rail. So what I did to avoid this, I didn't think of it, I copied it on the internet, is I took a couple spacers, or washers I should say, and stuck them underneath the transmission mount and in between the transmission case, and it dropped it down just enough so where the transmission case is no longer hitting that rail, creating any rubbing or noise or maybe even stress cracks. So I am able to avoid that issue. Driving around, I haven't heard it hit or I haven't felt it hit. So I think we're in the clear there. I don't think it's going to be an issue. Another issue with the all drive swap is the exhaust. Now I know you guys love this disgusting up pipe that I cut out of my old down pipe very quickly just to get it running and driving. I am working on getting a new one, but you can run a 3-inch or whatever 2.5 inch down pipe and through and about to the transfer case. But once you get to that transfer case, you have three options really. You can either dump it or you can try to run the exhaust up that exhaust tunnel next to that drive shaft. I'm not gonna do that route. That sounds like a pain. And once you get to that viscous coupler mount, I feel like it's gonna just hit a roadblock. So what I personally am gonna do, and what I've seen a lot of other people do, is they run 3-inch oval piping under the floor pans on either side. I'm probably gonna run it on the passenger side. That way it's tucked up and very close to the floor pan, and you can still have an exhaust go out the back. I'm kind of a butthurt for a full exhaust on Hondas because everyone hates that one Honda, the car meet, that's revving and sounds like a fart can because it has a fart can and it's just not good. So I'm going to attempt to get a full exhaust on this thing. It's not my #1 priority right now. I want to get it running and driving very good, figure out the issues, and then we will work on the exhaust. So it should be coming up soon once I get those tow arms and get in alignment and then put some miles on this thing. I think it'll be ready for that exhaust. One more thing to mention is that the Freelander drive shaft that I showed earlier is from a Land Rover Freelander, hence the name Freelander drive shaft. I believe anything from 2003 to 2007 of the Freelander model will work with the drive shaft. Don't quote me, I'm not 100% sure, but I believe this one is a 2005, so I know it's within that range, and clearly it works. I think that's going to be it for this video. If you guys want to see more, please subscribe. If you guys have anything in particular you'd like me to discuss with this car or the MR2 that is not right here, please let me know. I'm open to ideas. I'd like to make what you guys want to see.